I think that Andrew Tate getting deplatformed is good because he is a almost universally reprehensible person with like no caveats. It's basically just all bad. The occasional not horrible things that he said are usually stupid, and when they're not stupid, they're banal. So you have banal is the best. That's the best outcome. And then you have the stupid, and then you have the morally reprehensible. And there are serious social consequences to allowing ideas like those to fester and propagate freely. Andrew Tate is a guy who exists. I could make a ton of jokes about him, which I have in excess, maybe slightly too many. Probably not, though. If you're unfamiliar with the content that he's produced, I'm not going over it here. We're not talking about really that much of what Andrew Tate has actually done. What we're talking about is his deplatforming. This is one of the most high-profile, synchronized deplatformings of a public figure that I've ever seen, which is really impressive. For those of you who don't know, Andrew Tate, a former somewhat MMA fighter, I think he did acting at some point, I don't know. Recently blew up. I mean, really blew up. I think his tag on TikTok, which was his main platform, had 14 billion views. And he sold himself basically as like an ultra-wealthy, hyper-masculine red pillar who was teaching people the, I don't know, virtues of dehumanizing women and sexual assault, I'm guessing. He said a lot of dumb stuff. I'll lightly touch on it, but I don't think what he's actually said here is that relevant to the subject of his deplatforming. Because invariably, so first of all, most people seem to be happy with his deplatforming. The reason for that is because he made a critical error, which is that he got too big. When you say vile stuff online, you're usually fine up to a point. But past a point, the normies get a hold of you, and because your views are really only acceptable online where nobody's within punching distance of you, I mean, like this is the consequence, you know. Once people like really catch on to what it is you're doing, public pressure mounts. No website wants to be seen as the website hosting like the next wave of misogyny, and they all Captain Planet it up to take him down. I think it's YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and apparently Twitch. Twitch now apparently has also banned him. Twitch has a very 1984 Big Brother Oceania-esque policy towards bans, where if a person is banned, not only can they not make an account, but they can't show up. You can't hear their voice or see their face on other people's streams, or those streams will get banned, which pretty effectively removes him from the from the running there. So because he attracted so much attention, his views, which were of course unpalatable to the broader audience, most people now seem to be pretty happy with his deplatforming. However, some people are not. And I've seen this over and over again. This like well, I don't agree with Andrew Tate. However, don't you think it's bad that he was deplatformed? Normally, this is supported by one of numerous arguments that I consider to be pretty bad. And I wanted to talk about that, because this is just an extension of the terms of service argument that I've been wasting my time with on this website for a good portion of the time that I've had a channel. And I think this is just an excellent example of getting at the core of the issue here. Okay, so there are a couple of pragmatic arguments I hear, and then there are some more ideological ones. All right? So I want to address the pragmatic ones first, okay? Now, there are people who will say Andrew Tate's beliefs and the stuff that he said were very, very, very harmful. However, by deplatforming him, all you're really doing him is forcing him out into the corner, you know, where his attitudes and values can't be checked by people. They can't be accounted for and debunked. He'll only get more extreme. He'll only grow more of a shadow audience in the background, you know. Deplatforming him will actually allow his views to grow more. This is just factually incorrect. I'm not even going to waste much time with this one. No content creator is ever like, yes, I've been banned from every social media site ever. Perfect. I have them right where I want them. No, but this does not happen. It doesn't. It's not true. Obviously, that's the reason why this whole like oligarchy, or not oligarchy, like this monopoly or near monopoly on social media is such an issue. If you get kicked out of mainstream avenues for content creation and distribution, that massively cuts your audience, you know? Every once in a while, you have exceptions. For example, Alex Jones has maintained a huge media empire despite being, you know, banned pretty much everywhere. But I don't think you could fairly argue that Alex Jones' audience would be smaller if he did also have the ability to use mainstream media channels in order to promote his brand and image. You know, I don't think he would be I don't think he was helped by deplatforming, you know? I think he did well despite the impediment. But that's not really an argue to the point that deplatforming is somehow helpful. So that's just not true. Just not true at all. And then there's this whole like, well, by keeping them, you know, by keeping them in the shadows, you don't learn to debunk their arguments. The best way, tell me if you haven't heard this before, okay? The best way to tear apart bad ideas is to expose them to the sunlight. It's to keep them out there in the open so you can learn those arguments and you can debunk them, okay? I hear this said so often, which is weird because nobody really believes this, right? Like, does anyone actually believe, genuinely, sincerely, in their heart of hearts, that bad ideas will always get corrected and disbelieved if they're exposed publicly? Is that what you think? The interesting thing is that a lot of the people who say this, the whole like sunlight is the best disinfectant, like the people who will say that are also people who are let's say have some very contentious opinions on broader political issues. If you believe that misinformation and harmful values will get fixed through exposure, then why do you hate the mainstream media so much? Right? Have you ever noticed that? Isn't that a bit interesting? It's like, oh wait, so if you so you believe that exposing bad arguments leads to the defeat of those bad arguments, so why are you arguing against the broader institutional ideologies you disagree with? They shouldn't exist by your metric, unless you're implicitly conceding that you must be in the wrong, because if those continue to exist in the sunlight, they must be correct. Nobody actually believes this. Oh, and by the way, nobody, even leaving aside like the irrationality of that perspective, right? Because obviously it's not true. Humans do not have some like innate bias towards things that are morally or empirically correct. Who thinks that? Have you interacted with a human? Ever? Have you talked with anyone? Have you done anything? Do you live? Do you exist? Am I arguing with like a dead man or a concept? Of course we don't. Humans overwhelmingly been just a hodgepodge of biases and anecdotal arguments and flagrantly, provably false beliefs. You know, the whole scientific revolution has been this relatively recent, desperate effort at clawing together something approximating empirical analysis. People spend their lives learning how to refine the processes by which they can learn what's true. We do not have a natural affinity, any of that crap. So don't even. And that's leaving aside the fact, by the way, that the biggest audience for Andrew Tate's content wasn't like fully rational adults with well-developed brains, as though those people never get stuff wrong. It was like 14-year-old boys, you know? And if you don't think the average person has a natural predilection towards the truth, which they don't, that is just not a defensible belief, you can't possibly believe that high schoolers do, too. That's ridiculous. Obviously they don't. And I know that nobody believes that for reasons that I'm about to illustrate. First of all, has anyone, pardon me for bringing this argument out, walk up to one of these people? Oh, sunlight's the best disinfectant, right? Okay. So don't you think we should have MAPS and destigmatization groups be given mainstream attention and coverage? Surely the public expression of their beliefs would lead to more people being willing to debunk them. I mean, after all, the more pro people we have arguing their positions in public, surely this would benefit society. Do they believe this? No, they don't. No, they don't. They do not. No, they don't. I'm not even going to tolerate any, you know, any devil's advocacy here. None of these people would ever stand up for that position, okay? And the reason for that is because nobody fucking believes it. Nobody believes it. Why is everyone saying Mr. Grow? That's not even like the argument. I know your brains are latching on to some kind of like parallel equivocacy that you're drawing on here, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the very idea that if there is vice in the world, that vice should be promoted and exposed and popularized because it reduces the vice. Nobody actually believes this, but they pretend to sometimes when it's when it fits into this like pseudo libertarian, deplatforming is actually harmful because when you have people like Andrew Tate who are like basically pro and they're being listened to by millions and millions of like middle school boys, somehow the middle school boys being exposed to those beliefs will make them better at not believing those things. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's completely nonsensical. It's not even worth talking about, really. Those are the pragmatic arguments that I see against deplatforming, in the sense of like, well, actually deplatforming is the wrong strategy to take, The main thing that people tend to bring about is the ideological argument, right? And that gets a little bit more complicated. It's like this: you can't just get rid of ideas that you don't like, which, yeah, we can. We have a legal system. People don't seem to understand, but like all of the legal distinctions that we make, whether it comes to murder versus self-defense or murder versus manslaughter, when is it or is it not sexual assault? When is this person in the right, this person in the wrong? Slavery, any of these things, all these laws that we have are based on political biases that we have. They are, in essence, discriminatory against people, certain political dispositions. People tend to believe that law is somehow amoral, that it's separated from morality, that law is like this separate pragmatic issue, and then like morality dances and weaves around it. But they're not like really the same thing. Law is just codified morality. It's just the issues we have such a stance on that can be pragmatically weighed in on, that they've been enshrined in legal documents, that we're willing to use the power of the state to bring the hammer down on people who violate those principles. What we've done in building a civilization is use systems to ostracize and punish people who we find morally lacking. That's one of the main things civilization is. Now, I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with this process. It's just a matter of whether or not it's being done well or poorly. But it's a necessary thing that has to be done, right? The moment you decide it's wrong to murder people, and if someone does a murder, we will arrest them or exile them or punish them or hit them with a rock, depending on what time period and place in the world you're talking about. The moment you decide that, you are making decisions about what kinds of behavior are acceptable and what punishment should be meted out to people who don't meet those standards of behavior. Now, as a utilitarian, I generally side with the idea that punishment's one of a number of tools which are effective at deterring behavior hurts people. Speaking broadly, it's good to avoid doing that if possible, Now, thankfully, when it comes to deplatforming with people like Andrew Tate, we're not even necessarily talking about a punishment, at least not in the traditional sense. What we're talking about is an unwillingness to promote the voice of, a removal of access to. Now, of course, in practice, having something and then having it taken away is a kind of punishment. But he's not being arrested, he's not being thrown in jail because he's, as I understand, he's evaded the police on that sexual assault issue. So, he's ducked that one for now. We'll see how long he's able to keep it up. But when it comes to his deplatforming, it's not a legal matter. It's really just a matter of people deciding, through whatever systems are available, what virtue and what vice should be promoted in the public space. Now, guys, please keep this in mind, okay? Overwhelmingly, throughout history, we have made an effort to promote what people consider to be virtue in public spaces and through public mediums, right? I know this because conservatives won't shut the fuck up about it. They are constantly talking about the need to stop promoting vice, like the presence of queer people, in children's shows. That's a big thing for them. What they're essentially saying is that they want some types of media deplatformed. Being taken off the air is deplatforming for a show, after all, because they consider the morals present in that media to be harmful. They're making an argument that it's not enough to simply have this laissez-faire, libertarian, anything goes attitude towards, say, children's programming. You have to exercise some discretion, which is a value that, hey, by the way, I agree with. If somebody made a kid show and then it started being like pro, and that was the lesson of the show, it was like they snuck that in somehow and it was just airing on Cartoon Network, I would actually be very okay with it being taken off the air. That's totally okay with me. Don't know if anyone would disagree with that necessarily. And if you can argue in favor of some kind of morally informed cultivation of media on one medium, you can do it for any of them. But I can hit you even further on this. Given the fact that law itself is nothing more than a codification of morality, when people say stuff like, the only stuff I want removed from TOS, or like due to TOS, is stuff that's already illegal, what you're basically doing there is you're ceding the argument. You're not making a real moral argument. I see this from people like, they're like, Twitter TOS shouldn't ban people unless they're literally breaking the law. Well, why are you letting law, which is nothing more than the codified morality determined by the people we happen to elect, be the moral line for where you think ethically the terms of service should be on a social media platform? If the law suddenly got like way more light on stochastic terrorism, death threats or whatever, would you then say, okay, now our platform should allow that as well? Why are you ceding the ethical argument exclusively to a few hundred like octogenarian millionaires in Congress? Does anyone else feel like that's kind of dodging the moral question? We're talking morally. What should and shouldn't be promoted through social media? What attitudes are so harmful that it probably warrants a ban? I think that's a valid question. But if you duck it and you're like, oh yeah, just the current legal system just happens to get it perfectly right in all those issues, and like, don't worry, no, I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I believe that at all. And by the way, I hate to bring this one up again, but there are a lot of things that people who make this whole you shouldn't deplatform argument see on Twitter that they're actually very okay with deplatforming. Maps, minor attracted persons. I've seen enough time, on Twitter, all these screw the TOS, nothing more than what is or isn't illegal. That should be the line right there. Well, I hate to say it, guys, not actually illegal. A lot of that creepo behavior you see on social media that you nonetheless want these people to get banned for. None of you shed tears over them. So what is it then? The legal line and then also like maps? Okay. So why not people who are pro, right? Right? If you're capable of making an ethical argument that some people's beliefs are so toxic and so harmful that there should be kind of a social ostracization of those beliefs, you can't stop that at just one point. You've opened up the broader argument. It's an unavoidable argument. It's an argument that we've been having for as long as media has existed. So to deny all of that and then pretend that there's some kind of ideological or historical precedent for, oh yeah, actually we should engage in no cultivation whatsoever of publicized media outside of the strictest limitations of the law, right there, I just don't believe you. I don't believe anyone actually believes that. And even if you do believe that, there are inconsistencies in the argument. We do cultivate, and that's fine. Because, and I have to ask here, would you just let society be ruined because you're too afraid to take down the channel of somebody with bad ideas? We have to bring this out, make it a hypothetical, draw it out to its greatest possible extent, You have like a fascist YouTuber or whatever, and they lie, they mislead, they misdirect, they promote horrible values, but nothing they do is technically illegal, and they get worse and worse, and they get a huge hate following, like a following of hateful people. They get a hate following too, of course, but And it gets worse and worse and worse. And this has an effect on our political outcomes. And this leads to different electoral outcomes. And eventually, like, our country literally gets pulled into fascism because we were afraid of the social harm that might be brought about if we normalized banning one YouTube channel. At what point do you think, hey, maybe this, like, fake selective free speech extremism isn't actually good for society, you know? There is always going to be the risk of people abusing and misusing media cultivation. I made an argument for that earlier. There are conservatives who think that the representation of queer people should be kept out of children's media because they think it's degenerate, you know? That would be an example of an effort to cultivate media that I consider to be completely immoral. I think you can argue against that. But remember, we live in a world full of systems that can be good or harmful depending on how they're used. The legal system that we live in right now has a lot of problems, but I would never want to live in a society with no legal system where you could just murder and as you pleased. That would probably be worse, in my opinion. So rather than this, like, oh, I don't agree with Andrew Tate, but I think it's wrong to deplatform because blah, blah, you know, stop. Make an actual argument on harm. Do you not think his content warranted that point? That the point where something is harmful enough? And by the way, you see all these stories on social media, like people saying that, like, high schools and middle schools are full of boys who are just being horrible to the girls and women there. You know, like, social harm is being done here. At what point do you hit that line where it's totally okay to engage in that kind of cultivation? And if you don't believe that line exists, then would you be okay with just anything being thrown in children's shows? If not, then where's the inconsistency? Especially since, you know, these days a lot of adults watch children's shows and a lot of children watch Tate. So I'm okay. I want to engage in the actual argument here. I want to argue, you know, what should be allowed? What shouldn't be allowed? Are there problems with the systems we have for social exclusion now? Yes, there always will be. But that doesn't mean social exclusion is never warranted, because social exclusion through deplatforming is just an extension of the exclusion that we've already codified into law. We already have systems for extricating bad ideas from our society. This is just a part of that. It's an unavoidable part. It has never not existed. There is no free speech extremist attitude that can be rooted in any meaningful, like, long-standing attitude towards media. And it's never affected anything either. And by the way, all these so-called free speech extremists who, you know, all these conservatives who are like, yeah, we're going to make Parler, we're going to make Gab, we're going to make Vox, or not Vox, sorry. What's the one that it was like the Reddit clone? Chat will remind me. The moment they make their sites, they are instantly more authoritarian and censorship friendly than the original social media sites that they are copying their format from. Every single time. Literally every single time this happens. 100% of the time, with no exceptions, this is what happens. Nobody actually wants social media or any kind of media with no cultivation whatsoever. Not just for legal reasons either. We don't, because it makes these systems, these spaces, intolerable to use. Nobody wants to use social media where just anyone can do anything because it turns into a festering shithole. People are not naturally oriented towards perfectly sociable behavior online. Not even close. There is some degree of rulemaking, some degree of cultivation, which is necessary to let things move smoothly for literally everyone's benefit here. It's not like there aren't victims of a so-called, you know, censorship-free system or outlet, leaving aside like the harassment, the doxing, the implicit, you know, the hate, the threats, the cultivation of bad ideas. And because a lot of people who disagree with me on this will, like, ignore the social harm present in all the shit Andrew Tate says, just remember that the most free speech whatever prominent board in recent past that I can think of was 8chan, and it was immediately flooded with child porn. Even if you got rid of all the child porn via magic wand, it still would have been full of... Enjoy your cultivation-free internet. Yeah, it's never happened once without going to shit. So I think that Andrew Tate getting deplatformed is good, because he is a almost universally reprehensible person with like no caveats. It's basically just all bad. The occasional not horrible things that he said are usually stupid, and when they're not stupid, they're banal. So you have banal is the best. That's that's the best outcome. And then you have the stupid, and then you have the morally reprehensible. And there are serious social consequences to, allowing ideas like those to fester and propagate freely. And I am, as I would be okay with the cultivation of literally any other form of media, totally okay with just these social media sites not hosting him. Leaving aside the fact, by the way, that he would have had to sign, agreements on the terms of service and what would happen if he violated those terms of service on those platforms. And basically every single social media site has a clause in their terms of service agreement about spreading hate speech. But I don't even want to get into like a contractual argument here. Even if there was no TOS whatsoever in these sites and people who were banned, it happened only at the discretion of the admins of that site, I still think you can make a very good moral argument for his deplatforming. And I haven't seen a single person defending him, by the way, actually make an argument for why he shouldn't have been deplatformed outside of either pragmatically or ideologically indefensible positions. Just these basic boilerplate bumper sticker arguments that no one actually believes, like sunlight is the best disinfectant. Like, yeah, dude, the not Nazi Germany, if only Hitler had been a very public and widely known figure, people would have seen the problems with his arguments and they would have debunked him, and Germany would have gotten back on track. Rough out there, huh? I'm happy to argue this with people if they want to, but like I've never really gotten... Was he banned from YouTube? Yeah. I've never really gotten like the real argument there. It's always this fake bullshit. This actually you're helping him when he's deplatformed, which no, I'm not. Or sorry, he's not being helped there. Or the like actually you're somehow doing something morally wrong. I guess where do you draw the line? I hate that question. I'm not mad at you for asking it, because literally nobody knows where the line is. Do you think the law is exactly what it should be? Can you define every single ideal law that would be set? There is no line. There's a constant tumultuous battle between different ideas that form an influence where we think things should be in a given context. It's not a line. It's a tide. It's a water break. It's the shoreline. There will never be a line. I can't know where the line is because the line is a million miles long and it's always moving. I can know whether an individual instance or person or situation is over or before the line, though. It's always going to be muddy and arbitrary. And that's the case in all of these systems. All these systems, legally as well. It's always going to be like a difficult process. New free speech arc. I want to note, by the way, that I consider my position here to be pro-free speech because the cultivation of bad ideas out of society is essential to proper democratization and building a good, effective citizen. You need people to be educated and to have a basic understanding of the world around them and to have like certain axiomatic beliefs sort of implanted into them, like basic stuff, like, we should care for the well-being of humans. I'm okay with, that being a socially compelled thing. Because if people don't have these shared, like, values, and they don't work in line with these, like, we can't do shit. We can't do anything. So Andrew Tate, people like him, are nothing more than obstacles to collective human progress. They're detritus at the road. They're scum. They really are. This isn't some, like, edge case, some ideas are a little dangerous for the time, but free speech is valuable. Literally, like, he's not getting arrested here. He's a multimillionaire. He owns sports cars. He fled the country because he thought it would be harder to charge him for sexual assault. And he now sits in, like a fortress with his yes men, explaining to millions of young boys how they should view women as subhuman. This is not, like, an edge case at all. This is an incredibly... like straightforward point here. And frankly, the free speech and freedom of women and people broadly is impacted negatively through the prominence of his illiberal beliefs. Free speech is a liberal belief, but he is not liberal. He is illiberal. All the stuff he says, all the arguments he makes, they're oppositional to liberal values. And as such, he's not, allowing the illiberal to mold the minds of our next generation is not a like pro free speech take. You're simply allowing the authoritarians, the anti-democratic, the anti-egalitarian to wrest hold of the next generation. What do you say when you're given the statement, if your ideology is so true, why are you afraid of debate? First of all, debates are not a effective process for finding out what's true. There are, like, obviously not. That's the reason why research papers aren't, like, delivered to like an academic body via, like, rap battle or whatever. So it's more a rhetorical performance if anything. And you can challenge them on that too. Like, they've seen the presidential debates. Are those, like, perfect, flawless delivery mechanisms for truth? No, obviously not. Nobody really believes that debate equals, like, the truth. Second of all, who's afraid? It seems, from what I saw with Hassan, it seems to me, if anything, Andrew Tate is the one who's afraid. His ego is too frail, for him to withstand debate, because, see, the thing that makes Andrew Tate particularly weak as well is that, in addition to being stupid, which he is, I don't think there's some, like, underlying intellect there. I do think he's genuinely quite stupid. He also has too, like, fragile of an ego to survive direct insults without him needing to posture, but he's not clever enough with his words to keep up with somebody who would be an effective, I guess, bully to him. He would just be sort of clenching his fists impotently, wishing that they were in the ring with him, but they're not. So, like, does Andrew Tate go out seeking debate? I haven't seen that at all. I was under the impression that Hassan kind of, like, wiggled his way into one of those group chats and, like, had to be really sort of, moderate with the criticism because he knew Tate would cry and, like, ban him the nanosecond he got too open with it.